everybody. I think I'm so on our line because the phone rang. Welcome to being live on Facebook in a wine shop. Okay, welcome you guys. This is our 24th virtual tasting. Can't believe there's been that many already. We are tasting our Prairie Cuvée, 2015 Prairie Cuvée tonight. Beautiful white blend. So I hope you've got that nicely chilled in your glass. Once again, I'm Rebecca Nelson, the wine club director here at Becker Vineyards. Tonight we have our winemaker, Jon Leahy. We also have Dr. Joe Becker. And after the introduction, our assistant winemaker and enologist, Rachel Fanning, is going to slide in here and take my spot. So they will be with you for the duration of the tasting this evening. I want to remind everybody to share our live feed on your Facebook page as well. So please like it, please comment, give us your questions, but also remember to share that feed for us and give us some more exposure so everybody gets to join in. And with that, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Jon and Joe. And I hope you all enjoy the tasting this evening. Cheers.
Cheers, Rebecca. Thank you for that wonderful introduction. And thanks everybody for putting up with our foibles. I'd like to welcome you as well to the 24th tasting. And Joe, if you want to lead us off in a few words, and we'll get going.
Thank you, trophy wife.
Oh man! Oh, wait a minute! I got something back here.
You know, Jon, we really married you more for your brains than your looks, but
hey, you're doubly damned.
Nonetheless, happy Memorial Day to everyone. And you know, we obviously remember our veterans, but I think it's also important not to forget our first line responders in the current pandemic, and thinking that they're all still working, all still doing what they're doing, and grateful to what they're doing. And I'm excited tonight. We're tasting our Prairie Cuvée, which is an excellent blend of Marsanne and Roussanne.
It really is. And I want to add just one thank you note too, both to my cousin and her husband who are currently in the military as doctors, and also a shout out to my old man who spent a lifetime in the military. And don't worry, Dad, I am sending you wine. So, anyway, Rachel, welcome back. How are you tonight?
Very lovely. Just lovely after our weekend trip, our weekend run around through the vineyards of West Texas. Sunburn is paling out.
Yeah.
Turning back to a normal color.
Right. My scalp is I know you can't see it, but it looks like a lobster. So the Marsanne, I want to dive right into it, Joe. Before I talk about the awards and everything, which we've got plenty on this wine, the blend, the Prairie Cuvée. You and your dad, Doc, were pretty high on the hog about getting a white Rhone blend. So why? Tell us the reason behind the white Rhone.
Well, just to remind everyone, we were the first to plant Viognier, which is one of the principal white Rhone grapes, and we had been making there's a couple of things. We had been making our Prairie Rôti, which is usually some combination of Syrah, some Grenache, some Mourvedre, sort of a classical red Rhone blend, an homage to Châteauneuf-du-Pape. Prairie Côte comes from the idea of Côte Rôti, roasted slope, the style of wine in the southern Rhone, Prairie Rôti being roasted prairie. So we love white Rhones, we love Marsanne, we love Roussanne. So we wanted to have a corresponding white Rhone, and Marsanne and Roussanne are kind of interesting. Roussanne has been a very popular white. It's fairly difficult to grow in the Rhone region, as I understand, but it has a very kind of interesting honeycomb, floral, herbal tea, depending on the style. Mm-hmm. And Marsanne is kind of become a little more popular in the Rhone, as I understand it, because it's a little easier to grow. The problem is that if it's not harvested correctly, it doesn't quite have the right amount of flavor, so it's often blended with Viognier. But the idea here is that we wanted to have a white Rhone. The Rhone grapes grow very well in Texas. And as Rachel alluded to, driving around in West Texas for the past few days, a lot of the varietals that seem to be doing well are a lot of the Rhone varietals, a lot of the younger Rhone varietals. They seem to do very well in Texas.
Yeah, they do. And I want to dive right into this because as you were talking, I was just kind of taking a couple of whiffs. What I'm getting in here now that mine's been open for about 25 minutes and in the glass, I get a really mild anise or a very mild licorice edge to this, which I think is really, really indicative of the Roussanne itself. The Marsanne, or excuse me, I'm sorry, I'm getting that backwards. The Marsanne, the Roussanne is more honeycomb. The Marsanne's got that little bit of licorice edge to it. Rachel, what the blend is right on the bottle. And by the way, let me show you this bottle for everybody at home. So we've got the Prairie Cuvée, the 54% Marsanne and 46% Roussanne. Rachel, tell us a little bit about the vineyard and then also tell us what you're getting on this wine.
Absolutely. One of the things I was going to ask you, since you said yours has been open for quite a bit longer than mine has, at what temperature are you enjoying this?
Well, right now my glass is still chilled. It's not cold, so you won't see any condensate on the outside of the glass. You can see all the way through it. I find this starting off cool, refrigerator cold, so 42 degrees. I had it in the fridge for the last several hours, and then I pulled it out about 45 minutes before we started, popped open the bottle, and then about 25 minutes ago, I poured it into the glass. I'm enjoying this probably just below room temperature. So I'd say right now it's probably in the mid 60s, and it's brilliant right now.
Sorry, that's absolutely one of the things
I keep smelling this and keep thinking of honest to God poppy seed cake. So, nobody's hungry.
That's what I'm noticing as this warms up. The aromas on it just keep popping out. You know, it's something that keeps evolving. It's something new every couple of swirls. So the vineyards. This is the Marsanne comes exclusively from the Ready Vineyards. It's what 54% I believe is.
Yep.
So that particular wine, we are very specific that we always oak ferment that one through the primary and the malolactic. It goes through both every year. The Roussanne over the last couple of years has been a lot of fun to play with as we've kind of just not even necessarily fine-tuned, but seen where we like it and what we like to do with it. It's very applicable whether we ferment in stainless still, if we send it through malolactic fermentation, if it all goes through oak, a balance of, all four of those options above. This particular one, I believe, was a mixture of oak fermentation and stainless steel fermentation. And the part that was in oak was malolactic fermentation.
Right, absolutely. We go back and forth about this. Rachel and I discuss this quite a bit. Before harvest starts, during harvest, after harvest is over, you would think we're a little obsessive with fermentation. But we do go through a lot of permutations. Like, did we like last year's in oak? How much stainless steel did we enjoy? I liked this mallow. No, I didn't like this mallow. So there's a lot of that back and forth, not just between us, but also when the Beckers come in for our Saturday meetings and tastings. We do discuss this quite a bit. And I find that this is almost a perfect balance here. The amount of mallow was perfect. So for those of you not familiar with malactic fermentation, that's the conversion of malic acid to lactic acid. So it's a secondary process. It's actually a bacterial ferment.
So can I ask you guys to comment, how much skin contact are you guys looking at on these varietals when they come in?
I do not make orange wine.
The drive from West Texas.
From time of picking to the time they actually end up in the winery, Joe, can be anywhere from 8 to 12 hours, depending on how fast the pick goes and how soon they get on the road in the morning. So they are picked into, half-ton picking bins, and then those bins are put into a refrigerator cold reefer truck, and then they're brought down to us. So we did, the last couple of years, we've been sending up, a little bit of potassium metabisulfate to put in the bins. But this last year, we discovered a beautiful bacteria that is a wonderful addition. It slows it. Basically, it stops the wild yeast from fermenting. It slows down a lot of things, but what it does is it picks up those nuanced flavors out of the skins. on white and reds. And I know people are going to be looking at their thing funny, like he's talking about bacteria and all of this other stuff. And I'm like, yeah, it's just a soup of primordial goodness.
Well, and I'm just curious because I always feel like the fruit expression that you two get on this blend is amazing. Rachel, is this a fair amount of neutral oak? Is it French oak?
It is both. And I would say probably in 2015, we were definitely still in the early ages of experimenting with Roussanne, as far as how much of it we wanted in French and how much neutral, and even how much American oak it can handle.
Oh yeah, that's, and that's a fair point, because there are a lot of wines that do not like American oak. And we have used 2-year-old American oak barrels for white wine that have gone through other white wines prior. So, when we break in brand new barrels, especially in the white program, we have to be very, very careful how much new American oak we use, just so that a few years later we can have some neutral. Because you can't really take that barrel once it's done a red ferment and go back to a white. The tartrate stick and permeate into the wood too much. I'm just looking over, I'm getting a little flack from Primordial Goodness, my comment on
that was a good
one. Well, if you haven't watched Rick or Morty or Ren and Stimpy, you probably won't be keeping up. But back to a fair point, right? I'm just all over the place. And no, Brett, this is my first glass of wine of the evening.
What about them, Ryan?
No, I'm already in enough trouble. So what I want to get into the awards, because this, Rachel alluded to earlier, the aging and the ageability of the wine. And this is what I was saving, because we were talking about this prior to going live. So we've received a lot of really good awards for this wine. As you'd say, it's a 2015. It was blended and bottled just year and a half into its lifespan. So just at the beginning of 2017, unless I've got that wrong, Rachel, I don't think we did it in 2016.
Nope, that seems correct.
Yeah. Obviously, for those of you at home, I do make mistakes frequently, more frequently than I'd like to admit on my memory. So
Okay,
the two awards that stand out here are the San Francisco Chronicle. So we did the Chronicle in 2018 and we got a silver for this wine. Decent prize for them. We resent this wine in the 2019 Chronicle and we got a gold medal for this wine. The reason we did that was to show, yes, it was a risk, but we wanted to show that white wines do age in the bottle and they become, like red wines, they become a little bit more of themselves. I won't say better or worse, they do change. And I think some of those nuanced flavors you really do pick up after the wine has aged for a while. And that's probably one of the hardest things when we're blending or when we're tasting, when these wines are brand new, trying to determine how they're going to project out, how they're going to be when they're older. But this,
and I think,
yeah.
No, go ahead, John.
Now, I was just going to say, wrap it up with, I think this proves that a white wine can age. Especially this one. This one is going to be great even for the next 5 years. This wine will last a decade in the bottle without a problem.
No, and I think just as a credit to the two of you, the San Francisco Chronicle is, John, as you say, it's our Super Bowl. It's industry peers, it's people that we respect, winemakers, growers, and it's, and I think it's interesting. One thing I'd be curious about, is there anything you guys see in the soil or the climate that you really think brings out the character in this wine?
Well, Rachel, we just walked through VJ's vineyard 2 days ago. What do you think?
There's a lot of red dirt. There's a whole soil. I'm sorry, it's red soil.
Soil, and we call it sandy loam.
No, absolutely. And I say this all the time. Oh, that was a different sound.
Yeah, it's Joe. He's reverting.
So no, I say this all of the time that, there are certain wines that we absolutely can, I feel like we can taste that dry, red Texas soil, West Texas soil all the time. To me, predominantly it really is in the cabs, but it also always lends a nice amount of minerality to our white wines.
Yeah. Hey, I've been noticing a few questions, so I just want to interrupt. Folks, thank you for joining us. I am looking at your questions. I will get to a couple of them. There's one that keeps popping up about how long this should age, and I know I just answered it, but I also want to say too, if you all are enjoying this, please share it with your Facebook so we can invite other people in. This is a wonderful network way of getting folks not just to the winery and stuff, but also we love getting the word out about wine itself, not just ours, wine in general. I think life is much better with a glass of wine than without. So, but as far as being able to sit on this wine, I think a decade from the time of bottling through. So the next 5 to 6 years will be fine as far as I'm concerned.
I would concur with that.
Yeah. So the minerality that it's picking up, do you think there's any difference? So the Roussan comes from about 15, 18 miles away from the Ready Vineyard. So about a 20-minute drive. So what's the difference there? Do you think there's a great big difference, or what are the subtleties that you find, Rachel?
That's a really good question. And it's something that we talk about a lot with these vineyards that are all in the same area and, somewhere between 10, 15, even 20 miles apart. But I think it's so interesting that they're relatively close to each other and how different they all are given their, I know not everybody's going to believe me when I say this. There's a slight change in elevation when you get out to West Texas. And I'm not talking about from here to there. I'm talking about when you already are there. It does swell and have a little we have draws. You have a draw, you have to go back up again. So there are some differences. And I do think that these things, planning on the higher ends and the lower ends, and the slightly different compositions. We were even talking this weekend about these grapes were planted a little bit closer to the road, has a little bit more asphalt, and they were a little bit warmer. Even those tiny little differences matter.
What I love about the fact is it's one of the largest areas with no creeks, no rivers.
I explained to John years ago, why don't we have creeks and rivers in the West Texas?
For anybody that has ever seen this growing region, it looks like we grow grapes on Mars.
It does. It really does. I saw a tree out there this last time, though.
We took it out.
No, I also want to, I would like to go into as well the fact that I'm a firm believer that Rhone varietals generally overall have found a great home in Texas. I love the traditional Rhone varietals. I love Chateau Beaucastel, Chateau Neuf de Pape. One of my favorite regions in France is the Baccarat and the incredible richness of those Syrahs. But and Grenache. But what I really am impressed beyond is how well white wines grow here in Texas.
And it's interesting because I feel like in the Southern Rhone, there's always kind of a, Roussan, Marsanne battle to some extent. And particularly the parents of Beaucastel love Roussan. They still put it in. And I think what's interesting too about Texas is that you can see kind of a difference between the Rhones that we grow in the hill, the Rhones that we grow in the hill country versus the Rhones that we grow out in the high plains. Drew Talon has grown a number of wonderful Rhones for us for years, but as has Farmhouse, as has BJ, as has a number of our growers, and they're different. It's interesting that we can get that in Texas.
Okay, I'm going to shout out to Gary Clark because he has the funniest comment so far. Gary, you're a smart aleck. Do we grow the vine 6 feet apart now? And as a matter of fact, yes.
Sometimes, if we want.
Yeah. So at least don't worry, Gary, they're still allowed to be 3 feet apart.
So I would like to say something that alluding back to what Joe was saying earlier about, and we were talking about it this weekend as well, while we were out and about and touring all the vineyards. Years ago, whenever we first started selling Tempranillo, we had to teach the consumer about Tempranillo. We had to teach people how to say Tempranillo, right? And Viognier, right? It's not Wagner, it's Viognier. We teach people how to say Viognier. And I kind of feel like that's a little bit where we are with our consumers in Roussan over the last couple of years. We're really teaching people about Roussan and what it has to offer and where it fits in our, in our food and wine stream.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I think that's indicative of any winery, though. It is incumbent upon us to offer a little bit of education about the wines to people. And I'm going to touch upon this just briefly. It's one of my soapboxes. Thanks for giving me a perfect segue, Rachel. You're awesome. One of my soapboxes in the wine industry, it's not that wine can't be a luxury good. It's that we've spent so long convincing people that it was a luxury good that I think we've left too many people behind in the fact that it should be a daily beverage with your meal, or on the back porch, or, because, you survived the day.
By the pool, John.
Yeah. So, and this wine is a perfect leadway for that. It's very drinkable on its own, but it certainly will hold up to things. I'm seeing some scrolling comments about foods that people are cooking tonight, which is always a horrible thing to do because I never eat dinner before I do this. So now I want everything from a black bean veggie burger to roasted pork tenderloin, because I'm thinking this will go great with that. But honestly, I think one of the best things about this wine is how it will hold up to lighter fare and heavy fare. This is to me, again, back to the Rhone thing. And these white Rhones they're so nice. A little bit viscous, a little bit heavier than a Sauvignon Blanc, but it has body. It's got more body than you would think a white wine would have. So Rachel, we never did answer Joe's question fully. So skin contact, what do you think? 12 hours too much?
Yeah, I would say between the time of harvest, when they first start dumping the first bins, to the time that we get to start dumping those bins, I would say it's definitely 8 to 10, even 12 hours, how far away that vineyard is.
Yeah, so Joe, unlike some folks in the West Coast that have less than a 2-hour delay from picking to pressing, we do actually have a delay, and it doesn't sound like a lot, but that 12 hours actually does offer a lot of challenges with that skin contact on the wine. But I do think it's a benefit in the long run. I think if we were growing these grapes right next to the winery, we would have a much different animal. We would have a much lighter animal than we do now. And
I think one of the challenges in this wine, I was just curious if you all comment on both these grapes, is trying to get the acidity right. I know that Marsanne, if there's sort of a fine line between too little and too much acid in terms of making it flabby or not. And certainly with Roussanne, I would be curious, Rachel or John, what your thoughts are on that.
You want to take this one? You want me to? This is my life.
Hey, Rachel, whatever you do, don't tell them that we acidulate.
Okay, so it's not really that we acidulate so much as that this one needs some help with the acid. Roussanne comes in notoriously with a high.
It's not that they're wrong; they're just a little shy on being on the truth.
That's not the word you like me to use. I'll find another one.
No, I don't have a problem with it. I think it's a perfectly acceptable tool in our arsenal of things to do.
Absolutely.
At the end of the day, we're trying to make the best glass of wine we possibly can. And, the tartaric acid that we use when we do acidulate, it comes from grape skins, comes from the grape. So we're using a natural byproduct of fermentation to add back to fermentation. So that tartaric acid that we add comes from, oddly enough, barrels and tanks of fermentation. So it's dried, concentrated, and bagged, and we put it in by the scoopful. So
now, John, don't get any ideas. We're not going to buy more barrels than we usually do this year.
Okay. Oh, well, funny that.
I didn't get that memo.
Yeah, I didn't get that memo either. We were just, so hold on. Let me look at the notes here real quick, Joe. Just a second. Yeah. So yes, we do acidulate, and I think Rachel and I, we're pretty much on the same page when it comes to that, on how much, when, and where. And
do it again.
Yeah, exactly. I'm a firm believer that you get the best uptake with the first time you acidulate, and try to do it at one big punch before you start fermentation. White wines certainly offer a unique position over red wines when you do have to acidulate. Okay, so I've got to ask, barrel program, we talked about it, but what do you think? You've tasted these components out of both American and French. What do you prefer, Rachel?
That's actually it. I was thinking about it earlier today when I was, contemplating the wine itself and things to talk about. And this is one that I don't mind in neutral American oak. I do think that it handles it well, and I think it is because of that body and the viscosity that both Marsanne and Roussanne bring to the table.
Yeah. Joe, you've tasted these as separate components. So the Roussanne, the Marsanne, of course, the Viognier, we're all on board on the Viognier, but with the Roussanne and the Marsanne, What do you think when you're tasting this? What do you get? And then what do you think each individual component is offering?
I think that the Roussan, I believe we just released our 18 Roussan, that just sort of has remarkable honeycomb, kind of beautiful fruit. And I think Marsan's been a little bit trickier for us to grow here, but I think it offers kind of a nice, subtle, nice acid backbone to these wines. And I think Viognier just grows so well in Texas that you get so much bang for your buck out of it when you blend it with these wines. And I think that's an interesting comment by Rachel. I think that the neutral American oak, and I know that, as I understand, there's been a little bit of French oak in this as well. I think it's just an absolutely wonderful combination. I think it's a tribute to what both you guys have done with this.
Well, we do appreciate that. I know I do, but the thing about this, I have to be honest with you, that Marsan, we're gonna have to give the lion's share credit to VJ. On that, just don't tell him we're trying to negotiate pricing. So tell him it was a horrible grape that I don't know. We'll take it off your hands if we have to. Now this stuff has just been fantastic. Dr. Reddy does a beautiful job. He and his crew.
I have to mention, I've known VJ for a long time. I can remember, gosh, when I was probably either early college or late high school, and he and Subida came over to dinner at my parents' old house, and it's been at least probably 2 decades relationship with him. In his vineyard is beautiful. He's got a lot of wonderful blocks. He's made a lot of wonderful grapes for us. Is a soil science professor, and just a wonderfully bright, thoughtful person. Wonderful grape grower.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he really is. So we just got a question saying, please tell us the difference of the French, the American, and the neutral oak on each varietal. So we're going to go into now an 1.5-hour long dissertation on barrel aging on white wines. Of course, we can't get into that without talking about barrel aging on red wines, the sublime.
Or the price of barrels.
Or the price of barrels. Yeah, we won't go into that one. No, because Joe, honestly, you can never spend too much money on making wine.
I always have to spend money on my trophy wife.
Whoa! Well, that just makes me feel so special. So real briefly, we did talk about this a little bit, but just in a nutshell, French oak tends to be more savory. American oak tends to be more sweet, and I don't mean sugar sweet, I mean fruit profile sweet. And neutral oak allows the grape to be what it is. That's a general rule of thumb. I honest to God, I don't think I could do this in 20 seconds and do it enough justice. But the French oak, when you use French oak as a winemaker, you're generally choosing that not just for the savor profile, but also the fact that you know that wine's going to be in that barrel for a long time. It's a tighter grain barrel. So we measure the grain by growth lines per inch on the barrel. A tight grain barrel starts at about 18 growth lines per inch. French goes between 18 and 26 growth lines per inch, depending on the density and the age of the wood. American oak is a medium to medium dense. So anywhere from 10 to 14 to 18 growth lines per inch. American oak you tend to use when you want the wine in and out of the barrel within the year. So you want to pick up some of those toasted notes, but you also want to give it a good aging vessel. So there lies the puzzle when you're making wine. How long do I keep this white wine in this French oak versus the American oak? Can I keep the American oak in as long as the French oak? Do I need to use more neutral on American or more new on American? So there's a lot more than that simple question belies in as far as the answer goes.
And I also think that we buy a lot of our barrels from Diptos, and they have a very specific recipe for how much and how long what temperature they toast the barrels, and we've been very happy with that.
Yeah, there's some people here saying neutral oak is slow oxygen. Yes, but so's new oak. The oxygen uptake doesn't happen any faster or slower. It depends on the thickness of the wood and how often you open that barrel.
Right, that's where I was like, and if you leave it closed or not.
Yeah, right. That's hammer those bugs in there. Don't you touch them. Okay, I got to get, so foods. Joe, we'll start with you. Rachel, think about the food pairing, but Joe, what would you
Oh, I
bring?
already know.
You know, it's Memorial Day. I'm a by the pool kind of guy, but I also think that the right wonderful kind of solid cheese would be, or hard cheese would be great with this.
Mhm.
With that said, as as John said earlier, I do have a smoked pork that's been marinating downstairs that's ready to go in about 20 minutes.
Oh, great. Thank you. I just needed to hear that. Okay, Rachel, what's your choices?
I want pan-seared scallops.
Ooh,
Thank
yeah.
you, right? I know.
You
Right?
know, Rachel, my mother could make the world's best pan-seared scallops. That's a wonderful
I
thought.
have heard about your mother's kitchen accolades.
Joe, have you tried cooking pan-seared scallops? You might have the touch. I
No,
think you buy some scallops and have you cook a few batches.
I've tried enjoying them.
Right?
Oh, this just sounds wonderful. I don't think I can top any of that. I'm sitting here thinking, I really do want my poppy seed bread with this. It's a mildly sweet dessert. Okay, I have a trivia question. Speaking of, are you guys ready? Everybody ready at home? Because if you don't answer it right, you can't join us next week. No, I'm kidding. Here, true or false? Wines paired with dessert should be as sweet or sweeter than the dessert. Rachel, true or false?
False.
Joe, true or false?
False as well. False as well.
I agree, false as well, because the card says true. So obviously the people who made this don't know wine, and yet they call it wine trivia. No, that's an old rule of thumb. You're not going to go wrong with that idea, but you can have a non-sweet wine with dessert. We've proven that time and time again. You know, we've done
Chocolate
some
cake
really
and cab.
Pardon?
Chocolate cake and cab.
Chocolate-
Absolutely, boy.
Yep. Or what about this with creme brulee?
Ah,
Yeah, because a real good creme brulee is not actually that sweet, and it's sweet. I'm not saying it isn't, but
I think if you had the right sorbet.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. You know what would be really good is a lemon anise sorbet with this. That
There
would
you
be-
go. Right.
Yeah. Okay. So we got the foods out of the way. Apparently, I'm going to eat dessert, not my dinner. So I want to remind everybody at home to join us on Wednesday. We will be, I've got to flip my notes over here. So Wednesday, we're going to be tasting the Icon Barrel Select Cabernet. I think everybody's going to enjoy this one. I know I enjoy it. It is a fantastic wine at an extraordinarily fantastic value. And then Friday, we're going to be doing the Ranger Haze, our Reserve Malbec blend. So join us this Wednesday and Friday. Don't forget, if you've enjoyed the broadcast, share it with us. That would help us out a lot. And I think it'll help your friends find the perfect glass of wine as well. How's that for a little self-aggrandizing? And then again, next week, then we have the, if I'm looking at the correct notes here, we're going to have I don't think I have the correct notes written down here. Here we go. Next week, for those of you who are curious, and it is for sale now, our next week's pack up, we have the White Wing, the 2017 Texas Cab, or what we call at the winery, the 588 Cab. We do that because we have 4 cabs, and we've named that one after the last 4 numbers of its SKU. And then we also have the Grenache Reserve next week. So that's going to be a great lineup.
That's a lovely lineup.
We're trying to get a guest chef for this Friday. So stay tuned. We might be able to have some really good company on Friday with some really good food ideas. And Wednesday, I will announce what I'm going to make for Fridays. So I'll give you 2 days, not 5 days advance warning. Any final words from anybody? Joe?
no, I just happy Memorial Day to everybody. And I know it's not Memorial Day we normally celebrate, but it's certainly nice to be with everybody and thinking about everyone. And my father doesn't brag about it. My father is a veteran, the Navy and the Army, and anyways, he's my mentor, my best friend. So I always have to say a shout out to him.
Well, we do, and we do want to thank all of our veterans, and current and past, as well as those folks that have been serving us on the front lines during this pandemic. So absolutely. And to everybody else, I want to say at home, cheers, good health, and great wines. Have a wonderful week.
So long, Jeff.